Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
G'day guys, Brandon Clift here from the Mankind Project, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 38 of Masks Off Monday, where each and every week we prove to you that truth and vulnerability equal power. Paul, my friend, take it away.
Well, so welcome. My name is Paul Newell. I'm one of the Mankind Project brothers from the Metro New York region. I am also a weekend administrator for an upcoming weekend we have proposed called the Warriors of Color, a new warrior training adventure. And Brandon, you want me to just kind of kick off the context for today, or
yeah, jump right in, and then we'll introduce ourselves.
Sweet. So I'm here because I was having a conversation with Brandon. We were talking about the situation of things, and we're here to discuss like how we got here, and where we're going. Really giving some perspective, and it may open up some eyes, and it may not. Some eyes may still be shut. Either way, we want to put this information out here. Complete. I'm in.
Aho. Bharataji.
I'm Bharataji. I'm with the Mankind Project, been with the Mankind Project since 1997. I'm a Chicagoan, and I think my intention is to listen and to add where I can add, and see where it goes from there. Yeah.
Aho. My name is Brandon Clift. I do bits and pieces here for the Mankind Project, currently traveling around as a leader in training. And I'm here to facilitate and be a part of this discussion as well. And let's see where it goes, man. Let's see where it goes. So, Paul, you've prepared something for us, mate.
Yeah. So this is a piece that I don't know. Sometimes I go deep in thought, man. Sometimes too much, and sometimes maybe not enough. But like with everything that's going on, I'm seeing everything as a Black man in this collective, man. It's impacting me in a way, and I'm guided to see things from a different perspective, which had me write these words. So sometimes I wonder if all this is part of a plan. Sometimes I wonder whose plan is this all a part of. Sometimes I wonder if this coronavirus was an accelerant. Sometimes I wonder if people will ever grasp there is no normal. Sometimes I wonder if people will ever see the picture from outside of their frame. Sometimes I wonder if the collective conditions are breeding grounds for the hatred and racism that we're trying to erase. Sometimes I wonder if people realize that want for change must be accompanied with a willingness to make space for it. Sometimes I wonder do we really love each other? Sometimes I wonder if we know what love really is.
Shame. Yeah, shame.
So listen. So the reason to kind of get into the reason why I wrote that is because right now I'm coming across really focusing on doing my work and being there for Black men and men of color, and mostly Black men. And I'm finding that, I'm also coming across a lot of white people that are connecting with me because, they want to do something and, they don't know what to do. And it's a really funky situation because, like, what I'm also seeing is that there's a lot of hypocrisy because people want to change shit. And then at the same time, they're quick to call people out if they say one thing and that they're trying to dive into. And it's like that's why I had this piece, because sometimes I wonder if people really recognize why people do the actions that they do, right? Because I read a lot about like riots and protests and this. And what came to me is like it's like it's a kid, right? And I, for people that are watching this that had kids, like if you had a kid that, you didn't give it attention, and it wanted attention, so it's just gonna play around, it's gonna tug at your pants, and it's gonna want your attention. Maybe as dad, I'm on the phone or what have you. Now the kid wants attention. The kid's gonna get the attention. Usually something's gonna break or something traumatic is gonna shock me out of what my mode, my area. And when people like, I've heard people refer to the the people that are rioting, or whatever term people want to use, as thugs, as this, as that, why they do that. And I wonder if people really look at the facts and have empathy on what may have sparked something like this.
Yeah.
And this is the history of our country. Like, we look at the end result, but we don't look at what got us there and shit. So I'm excited I'm just gonna pause right there. I'm excited we're at least starting to unpack some of this stuff to know where we go from here.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Bharataji? What's alive in you?
So what comes up for me is that, so I'm 67 years old. So that means that I've lived through many of these. I call them insurrections, uprisings. And I remember the earliest one I can remember actually being a part of was 1968 when Dr. King got assassinated. And I remember I was living in Chicago, of course, and the South Side and the West Side, they went up. They just went up. And then that same year, Detroit went up, and cities on the East Coast and the West Coast went up. So it's not the first time that this has happened. And what continues to be, to me, is what continues to be overlooked for me is the fact that if it keeps happening, that means that there's something going on that continues to cause it to happen. So I think that over time, if there's not anything going on, if for example, before this happened with George Floyd, we had Michael Brown, we had Eric Gardner, we had, Tamir Rice, we had all these Black men and boys who something happened to them. And so a little something would happen to get the attention of the people. And we constantly are saying there's police brutality. We're constantly saying there's police brutality. And it came down to the fact that if it wasn't being recorded, it didn't happen. So it's not like this is new. It's not like this is the things that are happening with Black men and boys is new. For Black people in general is new. It's been happening. It's just now we have that technology that we can record it, right? Because if we hadn't recorded, if George Floyd's incident hadn't been recorded, we wouldn't know. The police could get away with the stuff, and we would be talking about, well, he must have done something. This must have happened. That might have. People would have been speculating on what might have happened. And the truth of the matter is, since we're able to record it, we can see what happened. And it's been happening for years and years and years. And I think people are just tired of it. I think Black folks are just tired of it. And it at some point is going to do what it did, which is there's going to be an uprising. There's going to be an insurrection. There's going to be all that stuff. And this is the result of it, and then you have people who are focusing more of their attention on the insurrections and the uprisings rather than the conditions behind it, what caused that. That didn't, we didn't just wake up one day and say, okay, let's blow some stuff up. We didn't, that's not how it jumped off. So.
Oh, but we want to spend all our time working on the symptoms. That's what we do. We want to cure the symptoms and report the symptoms, and the news will say, pick a side.
Right.
Pick a side, and we'll tell you what symptoms are happening right now and act like it's the actual cause.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what? Yeah. And so I think the narrative today is important, and the narrative that starts to come out from people who this is happening to. This happened to me in my life more than once, where the police, overstepped their bounds. So I think the narrative will begin to change the more that we start to see that this is not an uncommon occurrence.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind for me then is how can we prevent this from being another thing that we just forget about? Because I'm sure no one's thinking about COVID-19 right now. It's like, cool, something to distract ourselves with. And then what's the next thing that's going to distract us from this right now? What's present right now? Like, what kind of change do you men see being necessary, like actually in the ground kind of change, so that this doesn't just get forgotten about? Like, does it have to be burning buildings, cars, like really to make stamp a point out, or is there, or can it be done in solidarity?
That's a good question, man. Can it be done in solidarity? It can. I mean, there's always a possibility that something could be done in solidarity. The question is, are white people willing to own their piece in this? Are they willing to own their piece in this institutionally? Are they, is the government willing to own their piece in it? Those are the questions for me, because yeah, it can be done, but so something's got to be given up. So are white people ready to give up their privileges? And I use that word because some white folks think because they don't have a privilege because they were brought up a certain way. Maybe they had a rough scrabble kind of life and they don't have a privilege. But the truth of the matter is that the one privilege that they have is their white skin, or their skin color. There's one thing they don't have to deal with, and that's being black, brown, red. You don't have to deal with that. And so there's privilege simply in that. So are they willing to give that up, or to use that in such a way that it benefits everybody else? Or are they simply willing to just say, well, that's too bad. That's life. So I don't know. Possible? Yeah. Probable? I don't know.
Man, listen.
Paul, I can see it. I can see it, Paul.
So here's what's coming up, right, Brandon? Because I'm remembering, I guess it was a year and a half ago in November, I was in Philly with this man at Bridges and Boundaries, right, B? And I remember there was an activity in there where white people got to really get a glimpse of their privilege, because some people were like, oh, there was this I don't know, maybe unconscious aloofness, like, oh, well, I did this thing to really experience the get out of my privilege, and they were still in privilege. And I'm thinking about one situation specific, and for confidentiality, I'm not going to dive too much into it. But
just don't mention names. That's all.
Yeah, it was a situation where one of the men went to a restaurant, and it was a restaurant that was supposed to be for black people, right? And they went in and they acted a certain way, and they were like, we went into this place of this place of business that was a Jamaican restaurant. I think it was some kind of Caribbean restaurant.
Yeah. And
then they didn't recognize that them encroaching on the people, the private party that was there, was privilege. That was privilege. And that's the thing where it's like if we're really going to make a change, Brandon, this is the thing. There's several conditions that I think that are critical right now. And first is for people to check in with themselves, look at their attachments to what their fears and projections are, for real, and do this consistently. Because the flash in the pan, like we're going to run, we're going to do this, it's like, okay, cool. And then what happens? What's the consistency? It's like Napoleon Hill calls that a drifter. Like that's a person that thinks they're on purpose, but they get distracted by every single thing that they see, right? And this is the thing where it's like, look, you check in, like and I was even thinking something after this meditation. I was like, because I got someone reached out to me. He's like, listen, Paul, I want to talk. Hey, listen, what can we do? We want to support you. I'm like, man, I think one of the key things is if people of privilege began to check in as much as black men do or black people do, I think they would get a better understanding of what we're experiencing. And what I mean by that is like, I got to check in every time I go into a place where I'm one of the only ones. And by that, I mean check in with like, shit, am I safe? Is there another one like me just in case some shit goes down? I know I got an ally. Like, do I have to make these people feel comfortable? Are they scared? If I get pulled over, do I have to check and see if that cop's got a hand on his gun? When I check in, I got to make sure I check in with my hands on the 10 and 2. Like, these are all these little check-ins that we have to do, which in itself brings about stress. Yeah. And until someone can truly understand and check in that much, they're like, God, this is exhausting. Right? And I think And that's a long-term thing. It may not happen while I'm here. It may not be happening. My sons may be gone by that time. But it's a consistent action because there's some systemic stuff going on right now with media that gets to re-trigger and reactivate all these traumas that's bringing us to a lot of these situations that we're in, man.
It's becoming a boiling point of sorts, and I can only imagine that what we're going through with the pandemic and everything is just things are rising to the surface right now, and there isn't a model of how to channel that. There clearly isn't a model that is widely known or understood of how we can bridge that. And so, Bharataji, I want to ask you, what do you believe is the best way to create a bridge to help someone like myself better understand?
Better understand.
Like, I mean, Paul just mentioned the check-ins, or better understand the experience, better understand that's really, I mean, the question's in there somewhere. I don't quite have the words for it, but just to better feel, connect, understand, empathize, be an ally. I guess that's the word.
Well, I'll say what I always say. White people have got to do their work. They've got to do their work. And what that looks like for each of you or white folks is that you've got to, when you feel yourself projecting stuff, or when you feel that, well, I know what's best, or when you feel that I think that they shouldn't be doing this, or look around in your own life, see what's going on in your own life. If you want to build some bridges, create some relationships with people who don't look like you. Get with white people who want to and are willing to do the work on themselves with people who look like them. So it's not like we can come to any kind of understanding if I'm doing my work and you're not doing yours. And then we're looking for some kind of way to bridge the gap. It doesn't work like that. Everybody's got to be doing their own work. I got to be doing my work, and white people got to be doing their work. I got to be doing my work on my own internalized oppression, and white people got to be doing work on their own racism.
Yeah, that's the equalizer, right there.
That's the equalizer. It's the work, man. And if a person is not willing to do their work, then first of all, I don't have time for them. I don't have time to go over the litany of things that have happened historically and all that stuff. If you're not willing to do your work in the present, why should I take you back in history to show you why all these things got to be done with the way they are? You're not doing your work right now. You got a chance to make a difference right now, but you're not doing it. So
I can own that. I can definitely own parts of that around. Well, and this is something that I've heard mentioned a lot in the work, is the defaults that we're born with, where there may be, so for example, myself, I don't act out in ways that would suggest that I'm a racist.
Right.
But I have judgments that come through my mind in certain situations or scenarios, whether I'm, in a convenience store or whatever, those judgments come in. And so I guess the process from there would be to ask myself, or do the work to go, where's that coming from? Like, what's the story there? What's the judgment? Where did I learn that? Where did I pick that up? And then it's up to me to continue the work from there.
Yeah.
There's got to be a willingness, man. There's got to be a willingness to hurt a little bit, to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm not willing to be uncomfortable, then, I'm really just giving lip service to what we're talking about, because if it's uncomfortable, sloppy work. And if I'm not willing to be uncomfortable and willing to be sloppy and not willing to not have the answers, it's stumble along and, make mistakes and, trip over my own feet and do all that stuff. If I'm not willing to do that, then, I'm living in some kind of fairy tale world where I think that one day we'll all just come together and it'll be kumbaya. And that's never going to happen. Not in this country.
Nah, true.
Willingness.
Yes.
I believe there's no answer, but rather than saying, well, my door's open to anyone from a different background to come into my house, how about I step out from my front door and go into someone else's home, see how someone else lives, hear from their experiences. Yeah, I can own that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good piece, man.
Yeah.
It's big, man. That's what I was saying, like willingness to create the space to truly have something different, right? Because once people can start to have those conversations, like once white people get in a circle and have these conversations around fears that they have, or like projections and all these, and what we were just talking about, then things can move forward. And I want to add something to that, right? This term, the term of racist, right? Like, it's like anytime someone says something that could be like, oh, that's racist. All of a sudden, now it's like red flag. People are jumping down people's throats and all that stuff. And then nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So I did this piece with this guy, Mike Lickier. We talked about the call out culture, man, and creating a space to be that's judgment free. If people are going to speak what they're going to speak, and especially about what's coming up for them and like their thoughts, people got to be willing to listen as well as get dirty.
Yeah.
Because like it's two key components. Because if you're listening on some fear and some prejudice or some racist thought, you got to be able to listen and dive deeper so it can uncover it and start to shift and rewire it. Otherwise, if you don't, that person is just going to shut down. It's going to create more of what you're trying to create, what you're trying to correct.
Well, and that's what's coming alive in me right now, because from what I've heard about the weekends in South Africa, where we have men that are black, white, born, that have lived through pre and post apartheid South Africa and Africa, that the work they're doing on their weekends is something special, like really, really doing their best to actively clean up some rifts.
Which
is progress, right?
Yeah, I just heard about some guys from South Africa. Matter of fact, we have a weekly call with some of the South African men that are in MKP. We have a weekly call with them, and they're doing some cutting edge kind of stuff over there. One of the things interesting to me is how the South Africans dealt with the end of apartheid. And what they did was they didn't say, okay, all is forgiven, let's just start loving one another. No, what they had first was they had this thing, the Truth and Reconciliation Council, where people who had offended and who had done some horrible stuff to some of the Black South Africans, they came and owned their stuff. They came and owned their truth without feelings or fears of repercussions. In other words, if you come and tell the truth about what you did there, we're not going to punish you. We're not going to do that. But until truth is spoken, until truth happens, there is no reconciliation. There's no way we can go straight from how things were to this wonderful future where everybody gets along until that other piece gets owned. It's got to get owned, and there's no reconciliation without truth. And the truth of the matter is this country has never, ever owned what happened with racism. At least the president hasn't. The president before Obama didn't. The president before him did. This country as a whole has never owned the history with how they treated Black people and red people and yellow people here in this country. They've never owned it. So how can there be reconciliation if you're not going to own that truth? That we enslaved people here. We put people through hell here, but nobody wants to talk about it. The funny thing is that other countries. I talk to people from other countries. They talk about this stuff, but it seems like in America, it is so hard to talk about without everybody getting all freaked out. About this thing called race, for lack of a better word.
Well, hopefully now of all times, I mean, we think about like 1955, right? Where at least there was progress, right, to a new level of communication, a new narrative in which it's being open, and we can't ignore this right now. But to your point, Bharataji, why do Americans have to face their past? Because America's the good guys.
Yeah,
always.
I know.
Absolutely. Everyone else is bad.
You're right. And that's the image. That's the image. There was probably a point where it was possible for America to go in a whole different kind of direction. to live up to the ideals that they put forth. Now, I'm not talking about that founding father crap, because most of them were slave owners. So I ain't talking about them. And the ones who wrote the Constitution, you know, we were 3/5 of a person back then. So what I'm talking about, there was an ideal that was put forth, the idea that we can have a country where we bring all the best of everything together, and then we can, you know, everybody can benefit from that. So I think that at some point, there was a possibility of that happening. America has got to own its shadowy past. If America doesn't own its shadowy past, nothing will change. It's just like you or me or Paul. If I don't own my shadow,
ain't nothing happening.
Ain't nothing happening. There will be no progress.
No.
So.
Right. Exactly, man. Well, it's like, you know, it's funny because Bharataji, America, this country acknowledging their truth, or acknowledging what they've done, is gonna break down a lot of constructs that people are gonna be like, wait, what?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that's, in my judgment, by design to oppress, and it's deep, man. I like to say it's insidious, because it's in everything. Media, how we're portrayed, like even what's on here. I see the video. I don't watch that, man. I don't watch that stuff. It's crazy. Did you have someone else coming in? Yeah, it is. Listen, you know what? It's when Ahmaud got shot, I was so angry, man. Like, I didn't know what to do with this anger. And I was feeling some way. I didn't know what to do with it. And I was doing my work with my guide, and like, we had this past life experience where it was traumatic. Like, I went back, what was triggered was trauma from slavery. Like, it was like I was shot. And it was like, it triggered that in me. And I'm telling you, like, I'm a believer in, like, we live different lifetimes, or it's like we carry on energies over lifetimes, right? And like, this stuff, like the things that are put out there happening hundreds of years ago, like, listen, a lot of that stuff is going to be re-triggered, and is purposely re-triggered, in my judgment, to have people come back to these actions and come back to a certain state rather than transcend past into something different, something else. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, man, we have someone else joining us right now. We have Ashanti Branch, a regular here on Mass Off Monday, and he's Ashanti. We got you on mute, and we haven't got your video just yet. But I was speaking to Ashanti before he jumps on. Just some context. He's actually preparing right now to head to a protest down at a high school there in Oakland, and
nice.
He'll either be on his way or there to give us a rundown of what's going on. And there he is, the great man.
I've been looking forward to this.
Me too, brother. Man.
Shanti, can you hear us, mate?
I don't know if he could hear us.
Yeah.
Might be a bit of a tough connection. I'll just send him a message, but in any case,
yeah, he's multitasking right now, man.
Yeah. If you know Ashanti, he is always multitasking. Very busy man, putting in some work.
Well, we've corresponded. I haven't met him face to face. I watched him on the documentary that he was on, and then he said he saw. I think he saw me on the documentary I was on, and we just had this mutual kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to meeting him face to face.
Yeah,
that's what's up. That's what's up.
I'll be in and out trying to get Ashanti back in. So guys, feel free to keep rolling. I guess the thing that I overheard, I was multitasking. My apologies. But I overheard you guys talking about is really how, like, there's going to have to be a new way that the conversation is being approached now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A new way, and I guess we don't know what that looks like just yet.
No.
But there's going to need to be an element of willingness on both sides. Of course.
And there's going to be
risk.
Yes.
And the risk. That's what I want to get to, because I mean, talk about risk takers. If we look at this whole country has been built on. I mean, this country was founded from a revolution.
Yeah.
From violence, birthed from violence.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so are the measures that are being taken right now, is it just a part of the process?
Well, it's
Violence that's
hypocritical.
happening?
Well, it's hypocritical. It's funny that whenever something comes up like that, well, it's two things for me that are curious. I'll put it that. It's not funny, but it's curious. One, everybody wants to, especially white folks, want to quote Dr. King all of a sudden now. Now, when King was alive, he was the most hated man in America. All right. Two, the second part is that, what is the second part? I lost my second part. But the first part was that. And the second part is that, look at the history of our country, of this country. Whenever America has decided that America wants something, they've taken it. And they've taken it violently.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, somebody said, I saw this quote, somebody said, well, you know, you looting and tearing up and burning down stuff is not going to bring back George Floyd. And somebody wrote back and responded saying, well, you bombing all those Middle Eastern countries didn't, you know, eliminate what happened on 9/11. So you're telling me about how, you know, how hypocritical is it that we're talking to people, telling people don't be violent, but this country was founded on violence, just like you said, just, you know, Brandon, just, and anything that we've decided that we wanted, we've taken violently, if necessary. We've caused all kinds of political assassinations in other countries. You know, I think about Patrice Lumumba and how they tried to kill Fidel Castro. And any country that the United States decided was in their best interest to own those resources, they used violence. So it's very hypocritical to condemn violence. All of a sudden, violence ain't the answer.
Right. It's it's like it's a conditional situation. It's like, and that in itself is backwards, because it's like, okay, like what's the saying? What's good for the goose? Like, no, that's
good for the goose is good for the gander.
Good for the gander, right? Yes. So it's amazing to me that like people are condemning this, because this is who we are. I mean, like, think about it. Like, anything that happens, we're ready to go to war. Like, we're conflict. Even if you think about it, and this is the conditioning that I'm talking about. Even if you think about like our mindset, you gotta be the best. You gotta do this. You gotta compete. Blah blah blah. This, that, hustle. It's like that's our mindset in the country, right? So it's like if we're doing how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if we're like that, what's to say like that's more competition than collaboration. And this has never been about like here. It's never been about like, hey, we're gonna. In my judgment, it's never been about we're gonna collaborate. Only when something dire happens and we gotta step up. That's all of a sudden when everything all these actions come about.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. I've read something that, or maybe I watched it, but it was talking about how, I guess, the news and the media that may sit right of the spectrum was just condemning Colin Kaepernick for leaning. Like it was like the end of America as we knew it when he chose to take a knee. And to judge that in the grand scheme of things, where now we've got, and it really warmed my heart to see the the policemen, the first responders, those that were taking a knee with the protesters as well, like in Flint, Michigan, no arrests. But the sheriff was right in the middle of the crowd, right with them. You know, which I think is that's beautiful. And I believe that's a great example as well. We talk about the willingness, again, the willingness on both sides. It's great to see that we're seeing both sides of, I guess you could say, risk or the actions being taken right now, and getting both those examples.
So I appreciate it too. The thing that concerns me and aggravates me and angers me at the same time is, okay, what's the advancement? Right? We talk about like there's a movement. I can move it in place and not go anywhere. What's the advancement? So the fact that they're taking a knee, that's okay, that's great. Yeah. Now, are we organizing some policy behind that? Are we doing this like what's happening afterwards, rather than like outside of where the cameras are rolling and the Snapchat, the IG and Facebook pics, all that stuff? what's happening afterwards. Because, you know, B, you talked about this, man. To do the work is ugly. Consistent work ain't pretty. A lot of times you don't get a cookie and you don't get a reward. Sometimes you got to put the work in, and it's arduous. Yeah. So what, like, my thing is, what happens now? Like, what are we? Is it going to be like, okay, hey, we're going to come out and do this again when something else happens, or are we doing something to advance what's been going on, or to advance, like, correcting what's been happening?
Yeah. Strange. And the thing for me too is that the context in which this is happening, right? That we're already down on quarantine, we're already locked down, and now this happens. I don't believe in coincidence. You know, I think that things happen just the way they're supposed to happen. So for this to happen during this time, for me it's mind blowing. It's We're already dealing with one thing, now we're dealing with this other thing, which, by the way, has taken everybody's attention off the first thing. You know, so when this COVID piece spikes again, and it will, in about 2 to 3 weeks, it will start spiking again. You know, maybe we'll be back to that, and it'll start taking some of the shine off of this. So, you know, and then meanwhile, in America, there was another incident yesterday, and there will be an incident today, and there'll be an incident tomorrow about what's going on with law enforcement in this country, and what's going on with everyday life in this country. You know, you have the situation where the lady want to call the police on the dude for asking her to put a leash on her dog. You know, things like that, crazy stuff like that. You know, we have been given carte blanche by the current administration, the current federal administration. We've been given carte blanche to act how we want to. You know, white people have been given carte blanche to act how they want to toward black folks. Just call the police on them, do something to them, do whatever it is I feel like doing. So it's not going to end like this. This will continue to happen. Yeah. And what is the answer? I have no clue. I do know that the start is white people doing their work. I know it starts there. And what that looks like is looking at yourself, looking at your life, looking at your relationships. You know, I like what you said, Brandon. You know, whose house, and if I'm white, whose house have I stepped out to visit? How many relationships have I fostered with somebody who don't look like me instead of waiting for them to come to me? You know, that doesn't work. Doesn't work for me.
And perhaps some more present leadership would help drive that across.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so I want your guys' thoughts around this, because Obama spoke out and spoke to everything going on right now, and he's urging people to, you know, move away from the violence or destruction and take it to the voting booths. Like, take their frustration, take their anger to the voting booths. And is that the kind of leadership we're looking for people to say, hey, here is a path, here are some actions that can be taken? Or is it just a case of like, we just need at least allies that have some form of influence or power right now, when it seems like there isn't a whole lot of linear leadership happening at the moment?
I think on all fronts. Take it to the polls, take it to the economic places that it needs to be taken. You know, we're talking about a countrywide boycott on July 7th of not spending money. You know, black folks don't spend no money. So economically, want to do it politically, all fronts, every place that it could be done. Individuals doing their work, yes, all of it. So I don't think there's one way. I think that all of this combined will benefit everybody.
I'm hearing what Barry O is saying, and you know, along with that, I think it's important that if we're going to go to the polls, we go to all the polls, not just, you know, free of the big poll for president, but I'm talking about the local polls too. I know for me, that's something that's my work, because you know, I don't believe in politics. personally. And at the same time, I don't know what kind of tips those are, man, but those don't look advertising with that face you may be. So
I was trying to read it. I didn't know what those are. Peanuts, actually. I was trying to read
Oh, really?
But go ahead.
Oh, God. That's what's up. Yeah, I mean, going to the polls, I think also going to local polls, and I think people doing their research about what the politicians really stand for. Because, listen, the media can toss a whole lot of rhetoric out there, man. They can toss around a whole lot of rhetoric. And the thing is, like what B was saying, like white people doing their work, because I find that people can get caught in having a position on a party.
Yeah.
Like, no, I want him.
Yeah, that's how my daddy voted. How dare you? That's my identity. That's my identity you're insulting there.
Right. Instead of like, listen,
because I can't
what
identify outside of politics, because I don't have my own strong axis in my life of who I am, my values, my ethics, and because I don't do my work.
Right. Because when people fail to do their work, they think that is who they are.
Yeah.
They think that is who they are. That's far from the truth. They're more than that.
Then there's no gray area, because I can just be a liberal or a Democrat. Or a liberal or a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, shoot. It's interesting, man. It's very interesting right now.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm really excited about and really proud of. And I'm proud of the men in this community that are doing a lot to heal a lot of wounds, to find truth, and to create a safe platform to share truth where men can be willing to build those bridges, because we don't have a cut and dry 12-step plan to make it happen, but we do have a dream that we can equalize things right now and begin to connect again as human beings, and not as lefties, righties, black, white, but be able to connect as human beings. And so, men, I'd love you to share a bit about your experience with the Mankind Project and the programs that we have, so that those that are watching who are wanting to show their willingness to actually find a voice for their own work that they want to have. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the programs that you men have been a part of and the work that you're currently involved in. So, Paul, do you want to start off?
Sure. So I went to my Newell training adventure May. Actually, I just had my 6-year anniversary, and the Mankind Project has been very helpful for me as far as like learning tools to manage my emotions, manage clearing, being accountable. The work I'm doing with the Mankind Project now is I'm one of the facilitators for a 3-week program we have called the Men's Work. So it's really interesting because the Men's Work has been a place where we've had men from all over the world. And the thing that's been the most impactful for me is that every time we have a cohort, every man there is shocked at how on a Zoom call we can connect and go deep. It's not like a weekend, but it's still, we can connect and go deeper. Like we can start to unpack some of these things. We can start to teach some of the ways, like how people wear masks, like what Ashanti has talked about. One of the processes we have it from Ashanti's documentary. So being able to do that work, I think, is helpful. And for men to come into that work, I think if there are white men that want to start to create change, I ask men and white men at MKP, and also any white man that comes to take MKP, start to use the tools in your community.
Yeah.
Right. Start to teach other people how to clear, how to be accountable, how to communicate, how to listen. Yeah. Because when we can start to take the tools that we have here out there, that's when shit shifts.
Yeah.
So I encourage men to step to themselves and start to dive a little bit deeper into, what they think makes them, and start to create something different. That's what the project has been doing for me and for others that I've been working with.
Beautiful, Paul. Thanks for sharing that, mate. Great to hear that there's a lot of deep work happening online, although we can't be in person right now. I know a lot of people are yearning for that physical connection. And Bharataji, would love to hear a bit more about your work, mate, and the processes that you've been a part of. Nope, you're muted, mate.
I'm muted. I did my warrior weekend in 1997, and at the time I was very, very much estranged from my own father, We hadn't had a relationship, any substance at all. I didn't grow up with him, so he wasn't around, so we never really had a relationship. But upon completing my weekend and doing a lot of good work with some good men, that showed me that if I wanted a relationship with him, I would have to be the one to foster that relationship. And so, I did. When I came back from my weekend, I mended fences with my father, and it also allowed me to mend fences with my oldest son, who I didn't really have a relationship with while he was growing up. And so we ended that cycle right there, right then and there with that. So it allows me to become a better father for my youngest son, which he has a totally different experience of who I am than my oldest son had. Who I am as a father for him is totally different than who I was as a father from my oldest son. So it's given me all kinds of tools. It taught me. I learned how to become accountable. I learned how to live in integrity. I learned how to honor my voice, honor my feelings, be okay with my feelings, to use them as the messengers that they are to help me get to a deeper truth about myself. For me, this whole trip has been just leading me step by step to some other things. And at some point I met this man, actually I knew him, James McCleary, who introduced me to this thing called Inside Circle. And where we went into the maximum security prisons, and we did work with the convicts in there, and so that in turn, right before that, I started doing this work in this organization called Inward Journey, where it's a co-ed African American people who do the same kind of work. It was founded by some new warriors, African American new warriors. Founded our own organization because we saw that there was particular things that we needed to do work on ourselves, our own internalized oppression, so that we could not come out of there dragging our wounds over everything that we do, over our own families, and then into the relationships that we have because of the intergenerational trauma that we went through. So I've been, and now, right now, I work in Chicago in this program called BAM, which is Becoming a Man. And I've been doing, BAM, good.
I know BAM, yeah.
That's
with
good.
Juan and.
Oh, good.
Juan Arango, yep. Staffed with him in Mexico, yeah. Awesome.
That's my guy. That's my guy. So it's like this work has led me on that path of getting to whatever the next path is and following that path to the next path. So all these paths have converged, and now I find that, my whole life is built around this work. So I don't have like my MKP life and my life. This is my life. It's all incorporated into my life. So it's all a part of my mission. So
beautiful. Beautiful. Wow, the world just gets smaller and smaller. That's really cool. Well, I want to say, I just got a message from Ashanti, and he just sent me a photo. He said it was beautiful to see everyone's faces. Sorry he couldn't be a part of it, and that I think because of all the people that takes up a lot of the internet and what's going on there. But he sends his love and blessings, and I just want to speak to something quickly from my own experience for those men that look like me and want to show their willingness and want to start to step outside their doors and experience something differently from someone else's perspective. And I'm very much in the process. I am a white belt in this stuff, but when I went and staffed in Mexico, it was a weekend. Not only was it a non-English speaking weekend, 25% of the men present were LGBTQ plus staff and initiates. 25% of the men on that weekend, GBTQ plus in a Catholic country, which was just phenomenal. And so not only was I there to witness a lot of work, mi español es muy malo. My Spanish is not that great, but I know a weekend pretty well. So I could kind of get the feel and feel the energy. And before we got into doing the guts work, deep work, there was an opportunity for clearings. And this young man who I had connected really well with on the weekend, nice to see other young men in the work, said, I have to do a clearing with this man, and he pointed to me. And more often than not, when someone wants to do a clearing with me, I go through the whole like, what? Why me? What did I do wrong? And so we stand up and I have a man translate for me in my ear. And he goes, he goes, the judgment I have of you is that you are smarter than me. He's saying this to me. The judgment that I have with you is that you have more abilities than me. The judgment that I have with you is that you have more opportunities than I. The judgments that I have on you is that I am not as worthy of you. And I'm hearing this and I'm going, it's the first time it's ever really sunk in to be like, okay. And I'm learning through this work that it's not about, because of my, I guess we call it my judgments, my stories, perhaps my defaults I was born with, I used to go through this whole shame loop. Like, oh my gosh, my white privilege, I feel shame for that. And it's men like Carlos Legaspi that have helped teach me, no shame. That's not a productive emotion. Just be aware. Just be aware.
Word.
And
Word.
I got to connect with that young man because he was just painting the picture of all the shame that has been thrown across that border in the recent years and for decades now. Just the shame that's been thrown across that border that you are not worthy to be in this country, in America. You're not worthy of the opportunities. And I just wanted to share that as my own experience in this work of being able to connect with men with different culture, different upbringing, and learn in the trenches, in the mud, because this work is messy. And just by me turning up, I didn't need to have the answers. I didn't need to know what to say. It was just to be there and hold that energy to help that young man do his work. We helped create a bridge. And so I just wanted to share that experience with you men and those that are watching, for those that are wondering what it means to get into this work and to be willing. Tell you what, it's scary, it's uncomfortable, it's messy. I love every second of it.
Sure. Yeah. There it is, man. Yeah. Said it right there, bro. Nice. Beautiful. We had a lot of comments. I was looking, man. A lot of comments. Thank you. I'm glad we got to at least start to unpack this, man.
Yeah, exactly. This really, in its essence, was just a practice, and it's been beautiful to spend the space with you. Why don't we do a checkout and we'll wrap things up?
Okay.
So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Bharataji, Healing Panther with Dragon Spirit. Bharataji means the shining one. I'm checking out. Grateful for Paul inviting me. Thank you, Paul. And I'm grateful for taking a risk because I didn't know what this was. I didn't know this was a live Facebook piece. I had no idea what we were going to be doing. So I just trust Paul. I trust him very much. Grateful to be able to express some of this stuff. And thank you for hosting us, Brandon. And hopefully I'll see you down the road somewhere, bro. And I'm out.
Plan on it.
Yeah.
I'll be knocking on the
door. Man, Paul Newell, Makuna Fox Moon, man. I'm feeling grateful. Anytime I get space with B, I'm Bharataji. I'm excited, man. This man's got a lot of wisdom. And Brandon, man, thank you for inviting me and opening up the space for other conscious Black men to step up and be able to offer some suggestions, man. So I'm excited and I have some hope, and I still got fears, though. And I'm out.
Brandon Walden, Courageous Chimp, checking out with joy. And I came into this with a lot of fear. I had no idea how this was going to look and if I would have even played a role in any of it. And I'm grateful to have done so. And I'm grateful to have shared the space with you, man. I've learned. There was one moment, one of you, I had it on the view where only one of you could be seen, like in the speaker view. And I looked at my little camera on the corner and my jaw was down to here. Just going, wow, like how cool to have this conversation right now with all this going on and something that feels very productive. And so just immense gratitude to share the space with you, man. I can't wait to meet you both in person one day. And for all of you watching, and I'm out with that. And for all of you that have been watching and joining us, this has been episode 38 of Masks Off Monday. Thank you for spending this time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for speaking your truth. I see the comment section is going nuts right now. So thank you for being a part of this as well. For those of you watching, of course, we will see you next week to again prove to you that truth and vulnerability equal power. You men hang around, and I will just